Hey lady, welcome to the Postpartum on Purpose podcast. If we haven't met, my name is Anne Marie and I'm wife to James and mom to 4 beautiful kids, ranging from 9 down to 1 with one on the way. My hope is to help other women experience postpartum as a time of grit, growth, and grace. This is episode 37. Hi lady, I hope you're well. I wanted to chat briefly about how to respond or what to do when you are home alone with the kids. And I want to be a bit more specific than that. I don't just mean when you're at home with the kids during the day if your husband is leaving for work. Maybe he's returned to work after the baby was born. I hope he got some great paternity leave. I hope that for you. I'm more referring to when he goes out to do something that he enjoys, or maybe a longer trip, maybe an overnight or even a weekend away, and that scenario of when you are at home with the kids. Now, we're probably not talking about you in this episode. We're probably just talking about me. But since I learned that my sister had the same general thoughts that I did about her husband being away from home, this is several months back now, but since I heard that we had similar reactions to our husbands being gone, I thought, I wonder if it's just the two of us or if maybe this is a thing for moms. So, on the off chance that this is in fact a thing for moms, just a couple of thoughts here. So, I've set the scene, right? It might be that your husband is going for a night out with the guys. Maybe he's going deer hunting. So the specific example that I'm going to share today has to do with my husband going deer hunting for the season. So he'd be gone one day and then for 6 hours, let's say, and then come back, and then maybe a week later on that weekend, he might go again. That's more what I'm describing here. So he is gone. He's doing something that will be in some way enjoyable to him. And you are at home with the kid or kids. Maybe that's 2, maybe that's 4. I don't know how many that is. But here you are at home with the kids. I would love for you, to the extent that you can, and if this applies to you, I would love for you to think about what it is you don't like about him being gone. Or what the thoughts are that you're having, because maybe the thoughts actually aren't so much related to him. Maybe they're more related to you. And here's what I mean by that. One frustration that I might have with my husband being gone to go deer hunting might be, how come he gets to go do that? How come I'm stuck here at home with the kids? So that might be there might be an undertone there of, I'm not feeling appreciated, or I am not feeling that my contributions and how hard I'm working are being recognized when he's leaving. And so maybe there's a bit of resentment there. Another thought I might have, which I would say is related to, but still a little separate from that first thought of not feeling appreciated, is that particularly early on, I might feel very tethered to the baby, such that even if he had said, oh, Anne Marie, go out for 4 hours or go out for 6 hours, right? That's about the amount of time that he would usually be gone for deer hunting, theoretically. By the time he gets out there, gets set up, hunts, waits till sundown before he comes home. But even if he offered me that amount of time, if I have a young baby, I can't go for that long without the baby. And it's not quite the same if the baby's coming with me. That can be one frustration. So there might be, I'm not really feeling appreciated. There might also be, I have this baby who is tethered to me, or I am tethered to them. I don't know which is the correct way to say that. There might be those two things, or one of those two things. You might also have a sense of being stuck. Maybe you would say, well, of course I want him to go and have a good time. But while he's out having a good time, I am stuck at home with how many children I have, or this new baby that I have. Another thought you might have would be, I am not well emotionally. related to the postpartum period. I am not well emotionally, and I am afraid for him to leave. I'm not feeling well emotionally, and I'm afraid for him to leave. And I want to address each of these potential thoughts. Some of them might overlap. Some of them might be distinct or different. Along the lines of not feeling appreciated, if that's one that you would check the box next to that, I wonder if you could have just a frank conversation with him and let him know, love, or whatever your term of endearment for him is. Love, I've realized that when you get to go out and do something fun, or even you're going to be gone overnight, I'm feeling whatever you're feeling. I feel a little left out, or I feel a little neglected, or it doesn't feel like you recognize how much effort it takes for me to, and then fill in the blank for that as well. Manage the house while you're gone, take care of the kids, etc. Whatever that feels like for you. To just have that conversation with him. And that conversation isn't the same thing as saying, you can't go, or don't go. But it is putting your actual thoughts and feelings on the table vulnerably, so that you can have a real conversation around them that doesn't say, like I said, it doesn't say you can't or you don't. But if there's a piece that's missing when it comes to affirmation or recognition of what I've heard so many times referred to as the mental load, and also the physical load, but the mental load sometimes may be harder to carry because it's not seen. If all of that is relevant, I just wonder what would happen if you had a conversation. And I also don't pretend that one conversation is likely going to right the ship, so to speak, turn the Titanic around. But it could be a beginning. It could be a beginning to have productive conversations about feeling more appreciated, feeling more acknowledged, seen, heard, recognized, appreciated. When it comes to feeling tethered to the baby, you've got options for how you respond to that feeling. I don't think a great option is to shame yourself or judge yourself for having that reaction. Maybe you don't have that reaction. Maybe you don't feel tethered to your baby. But I know that after every single one of my kids at different times, I have certainly felt that. Well, I can't leave unless I'm going to bring the baby with me. And that just changes the experience a little bit. Does it always feel like that? No, but sometimes it does. If feeling tethered to the baby is relevant to you, I wonder what you could do with that. You could look at it through a different mindset as one option. Maybe you could do a combination of things. The different mindset might be, this is a really limited time I have of being so closely connected with my baby. It's not going to be like this 2 months from now, 4 months from now, etc. So you might remind yourself of how precious this time is and how fleeting. It's really a transitional or transitory time. You might respond that way. You might say, well, what can I do for 2 hours? What can I do for an hour and a half in between feedings? Maybe I can run out to a coffee shop by myself, not going very far. Maybe I can go for a walk by myself. I can do, if you put a blank line after that, I would just invite you to take a couple of minutes and see what you could put there. I wonder if you would feel less limited just by brainstorming what you could do in an hour and a half or 2 hours between feedings. And maybe your baby's a little bit older. Maybe you have 3 to 4 hours between feedings. What could you do with 3 to 4 hours? On the one hand, it's not an overnight. if that's what your husband's doing. Maybe he's going to a work conference for a weekend. No, it's not. You're right. It's not the same thing. It's not 50-50 or equivalent. No. But what can you do? What do you have access to? What's available to you? And then let's talk briefly if you're feeling stuck. I'm stuck here with these kids at home. Something I realized, though I didn't quite take advantage of it when my husband was deer hunting in what I'll call the problematic season, which I'm going to get to more details on that in a minute. Something I realized about halfway through the season was he is gone for 6 hours. On the one hand, on the other, I could go to my sister's, visit for a couple of hours, have an actual meal with her, she lives an hour and a half away, and drive home with these kids by the time my husband got home. Now, like I said, I realized that halfway through the season. At that time also, my son was not very old. Did I choose to do that? No, I didn't. But just realizing I could go and get away, so to speak, to a place where all of my children would be safe and cared for. I would be there too, but we'd be going to socialize. I could do that. It also occurred to me, again, not something I took advantage of, but something I realized I could do. I could get a babysitter. Not every time it goes deer hunting. That'd be an expensive deer season. But I could occasionally get a babysitter if I wanted. And just me and the baby could go somewhere maybe for a couple of hours. I could enlist my grandma tribe during that time. Or even, I could ask them just to come over and sit with me. I could ask somebody to come over and just hang out with the kids at our home. Maybe they join us for supper or tea time. We don't actually have tea time, but I think it sounds fancy. So if you are feeling stuck, I'd love for you to consider, is there anything fun I would have the energy to do? Not someplace super stressful where it's going to be like, my children are running in 85 different directions and this is not good because there's only one of me to chase them. But if there's something you could do that would actually be fun for you, I'd love for you to brainstorm that. And then the final scenario might be, I don't like my husband leaving for however many hours at a time or an overnight because emotionally I don't feel well. And that was the case for me, lady, when my husband went deer hunting and my son, my youngest at the time, was 2 months old. And it wasn't just that he was 2 months old. For some people, especially I think perhaps as a new mom, 2 months might have been kind of early for my husband to be gone maybe a couple times a week for a lot of hours at a time. But that wasn't it in this case. It wasn't that I didn't know what to do or felt lacked the knowledge of how to care for my child. But I was having really scary thoughts when he was gone. That was, like I said, I didn't know at the time, that was obsessive compulsive disorder, OCD. Intrusive thoughts can actually be very common, particularly in the postpartum period, as opposed to what we might traditionally think of as OCD behaviors like frequent hand washing or tremendous fear of germs. The fear of germs thing can be postpartum too, but a lot of times it's having very, very scary thoughts that you just feel like you can't let go of. You don't want them, but they're there. And it also feels like they mean something about you, that they represent and are you. And so if that's where you find yourself, lady, I'd love for you to not do what I did. On the one hand, I knew the scary thoughts weren't reality, which is why I didn't technically tell my husband not to go. I knew that I would be okay while he was gone. I knew the kids would be okay too. But what I knew intellectually and logically did not match my feelings and my physical reaction, like my bodily reactions to those feelings. I felt very anxious. I felt very panicky while he was gone. And if that's the case for you, I'd love for you to not ignore that. If instead, or what if instead, what if you just told him, babe, I know it's not reality, but this is how it feels right now, and I want to acknowledge that and get help for it. Instead of stopping where I did at I'm really anxious, but not even exactly verbalizing that to him. I knew that. I knew I was very anxious. But I told myself it was not real, which it wasn't. But I wasn't able to know why. I didn't know what I was dealing with. I didn't know what was going on. And so it made for some really stressful times that did not need to be that stressful. And this is going to shock you, I'm sure. My husband could perceive my anxiety. And in fact, it came out at him. Not by saying, I had so many scary thoughts while you were gone. It came out as, why did you take so long? Why didn't you come home sooner? Why didn't you blah, blah, blah? It came out as blaming. So he didn't actually have that much fun deer hunting because he was anxious, knowing that I was going to be anxious, probably, about him being gone and when he got home. Neither of us really thrived during that time. Now, about halfway through the deer season, I guess this was God's grace, I recognized that something needed to change in my attitude towards him. I still was not acknowledging, part of why I'm so anxious is because of the scary thoughts. But I was able to recognize this is the time that's really important to him. And so for me to be as free as I possibly can and generous with him being gone for that amount of time, again, if you know anything about hunting, the seasons are relatively short in the span of an entire year. It's a couple months. There was a shift in my heart where I was able to be more receptive to him being gone and accepting of it. But I still was not having the self-compassion piece of getting help for how I felt. So our communication improved because I was less resentful of him going, which is a plus. But my own emotional well-being was not being tended to in the way that it needed to. So while I can't tell you exactly why you're feeling what you're feeling, if in fact you're having scary thoughts or just really struggling while your husband's gone, I can tell you it's worth it to get help, to reach out to somebody, to take a step and simply say hey, I don't like how I'm feeling. What can we do? I know I'm not alone. I know this is not my fault. I know things can be better. What can be done? That's it, I think, for today, lady. If your husband is gone for a night, for a weekend, and you have one of these constellation of thoughts, right? Either I'm not feeling appreciated, I'm feeling tethered to the baby, I'm stuck at home with these kids, or emotionally I am having a disproportionate fear response to him being away, you've got options. You've got options. It can be better and it can be different. I wish you the very best. I wish you the very best in exploring what might be helpful to you. And there can be trial and error. And I look forward to talking to you soon. I'm pretty sure next week will be a guest hosted episode again. And one last thing, I would just simply ask you, if you're up for it, lady, and you haven't already, I would love for you to rate the podcast on Apple or Spotify or wherever it is you're listening to it. And if you would leave a review, that would be lovely because that helps the podcast be seen. Well, nobody's seeing it. It helps the podcast be heard by more people, more moms like you. I'll talk to you later. Bye.